All right, everyone, welcome to our last edition of the San Diego Contributors Summit Retro. I'm Paris, as always. And first up, we have Bob with finishing out registration from the retrospective. I'll be taking notes, and if anybody else can jump in and help take notes, that would be great too. Bob, kick things off for us.
Okay, the last thing I do want to talk about with registration is the amount of no-shows that we're getting for the new contributor workshop. And I had this idea, and a couple other groups have done this sort of thing for like meetups, and I believe the CNCF have done this for some of their other events, and that's to actually charge like a minimal fee. We're talking like $1 to $5, and if they show up, it is refunded, or if they cancel early, it is refunded. It's just to try and prevent the people that are signing up and then never following up with it.
Do we know were there any no shows to the new contributor workshop that actually went to the rest of the sessions? Was that a thing, or is it just people not showing up at all?
Not showing up at all.
Okay.
I can tell you we had probably at least 30 no-shows.
Wow.
The thing is, like, this definitely takes like seats from people that we want to, encourage coming.
And the crazy thing is that's also accounting for the fact that we padded in 30 people for no-shows.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that means we technically had like 60 no-show.
Some of them were taking, so probably closer to like 50, 45 to 50.
Yeah. All right. Any other comments or thoughts about Bob's suggestion? I mean, obviously, Jeff, you can take that into Amsterdam. Anything else before we close out registration for retro purposes?
Just that I am going to consider it for Amsterdam. I just want to talk to Deb and see how difficult it is to set up on CNCF side.
Okay.
Like, is it something that they can do for Amsterdam, or is it something we should try and target for Boston? That's mainly what I want to ask.
We can do it for Amsterdam. I'll connect with y'all.
Yay! Hi, Deb.
Hello.
Any other comments on that idea?
Or comments on Reg in general, because that wraps up Bob's registration retro.
Well, you and me, we talked about this at the conference, Bob, and I think it's a great idea. It's just a minimal amount, and it makes people less prone to not go. So yeah, I think it's a great idea. And of course, all the proceeds would be donated to the Diversity Scholarship Fund or something.
Yep.
All right. So let's go ahead and move on to future considerations section. Suggestions for next time based on our previous experiences with this. Let's see, it looks like I'm up first with some two quick ones. One, have your own venue. Don't share with other colos. We've done this before. It doesn't work, especially registration. The other suggestion is templating is cool, but don't lose the creativity. I watched us several times during this summit do things the way we did them the last time, just because that's how we did them. And that kind of loses, I think, the creativity of the event itself, like especially like, for instance, shirts, swag, things like that. So just my advice is, yes, templating process is cool, but don't lose your creativity. Jeff, Bob, Burkus, you're up next.
Yeah, so this is something that we've been kind of tossing around. It might not be feasible with every venue, but actually having a completely separate wireless network that people can connect to in the workshops in order to have kind of a not congested wireless network talking to the Harbor Box. I believe it's not possible for KubeCon China and India events, but for NA and EU events, it should be possible. Josh probably knows a lot more.
Well, I just know that it's not possible for China, but But yeah, I don't see why we wouldn't be able to do it in Amsterdam.
Didn't we have a hardwire line for the harbor boxes?
So the harbor box is not the issue here. We definitely reached capacity on the Wi-Fi and had a bunch of people not being able to follow along at the pace we wanted them to in the contributor workshops because the internet just died several times, and then because they needed to download a bunch of stuff that we didn't have on the hardware box because that was not in the prep doc essentially.
The same happened in the current contributor workshop too. Most of the demos and things and tutorials couldn't go off in that room either. So that room was also a waste. So we had 3 sessions that pretty much were a waste, which is very.
So Jeff talked to me about this as well at the conference to essentially have the harbor box and have a separate Wi-Fi network around that one, and then have the harbor box essentially proxy everything. That would help us a lot when it comes to removing a ton of traffic that's going from the internet to the venue. It will not help us have an easy way to set up Wi-Fi for everyone, because we're splitting this across several rooms, right, and several larger spaces within a big hotel complex. So it would require quite a lot of infrastructure, Wi-Fi wise. But yeah, if we could do,
if we have adjacent rooms like we did in the Marriott, though, we could just use a consumer grade mesh access point.
I mean, we can probably get a few like Unify access points, or some proper enterprise grade, because we are running workshops with hundreds of people. I would rather spend a few more dollars to get stuff like that.
So I'm happy to have this conversation with y'all, because I'm going to need to understand a lot more to make sure we can work with Right Round in the venue to do it. But if the issue was that the content isn't on the harbor box and people had to access the internet to get the content,
no,
if they're connecting,
that's not the issue.
Okay.
The issue is that attendees who are trying to download stuff from the harbor box are using the same Wi-Fi network that other attendees who are trying to access the internet are using.
Okay.
That's the problem.
Got it. Okay.
That's a part of the problem. Yes.
Part of the problem. Understood. Okay.
Having to grab some stuff from the internet certainly compounded the problem.
Yeah, and the Wi-Fi just dying, essentially being completely congested. For several during several times during the day didn't help. Yeah, I'm all for this. It will require a lot of coordination.
And possibly budget.
Yep.
So yeah, Jeff and Deb and future leads, make sure that you account for that, because that means you'll probably have to skimp somewhere else since we hit the budget most events. So
just add more budget.
Yeah, I agree as well. I mean, truly. All right, so I'm going through this actually and lumping some of this stuff together so we can kind of keep on theme here with new contributor workshop future considerations. Jeremy, you have a few here. Is Jeremy on? Maybe, like, for instance, maybe think of a better way to encourage new contributor workshop folks to have more setup done prior to the workshop. Jeremy, are you on? Last call, Jeremy. I don't think he is on yet.
I don't see him on.
Okay, we'll skip Jeremy for right now. And then anybody else with new contributor workshop future considerations, they're going to have their full retro in like 20 minutes. So we can either punt that to their retro or speak now or forever hold your peace. Anything about new contributor workshop future considerations? All right. So moving on to Schwag future considerations. Jeff.
I'll go again. So this is long story short, we had people that were trying to, well, they were just grabbing bags. They weren't even looking at their names. They were just grabbing bags. And that's kind of bad. In Seattle, we had a single point where people would come in and pick up their bags. If we are going to have that kind of welcome desk / reg like touch point as people funnel in, we should be handing them their swag, and we don't need to give it to them with bags. So I think eliminate the whole bag process. I think that also will help save some money and effort, and then we just pick out the swag that they need as they come in.
I've mentioned it to Jeff already. The only way that that's going to work, y'all, is if you have a separate registration, aka you're not next to other colos. You can see that there's already issues like getting into the event itself. So that would just at that giving out swag at Reg would only further that issue. So that is why it is absolutely key. Y'all have your own registration area, your own entrance, so that there is no bottleneck and commotion and getting people through the door in like a 30-minute period. So that's
logistics will need to be on point for that one. But if it's executed even more than half well, I think it actually provides a net benefit.
So just thinking out loud here, if we, instead of having the 2 table setup that we had over in SanDiego, if we had just thinking here, if we would have had a swag / info desk, not a registration desk, because people can register everywhere, right? So just a swag and info desk at where the new contributor swag was at, and we could have.
That's more or less the idea.
Yeah, because having it tied to registration, I think that will just become a bottleneck, and I would rather have people register wherever they want. Because it's easy. A ton of people registered at the airport. It's great. Then they come to the venue and they pick up their swag, instead of having one single registration point, because that's going to be a huge bottleneck.
Yeah, at that point, it becomes more like the way the Linux Foundation does the T-shirt pickup. It's basically your swag pickup at a desk.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we had this time, though. Except there wasn't like someone at a desk. It was like a self-service swag pickup. I feel like a lot of the complaints that I heard were people that just didn't even know the bags were there. So I'm wondering if that's why I'm thinking like it needs to be near the door where people come in as like a first thing so that they see it. Or be very close to a door where people are coming in so that they see it.
They all passed the bags when they came in for coffee or breakfast.
And both stations had, like, there was signage right next to them.
So I don't understand the complaint that people didn't see the bags. But I definitely think we can be a little clearer. We can have a big sign, an enormous swag sign, just so people know that they should pick things up there. But yeah, we can definitely staff it, but that would be more staff.
True, but I don't think that'll be difficult. I don't think staffing it will be that difficult. Because if it's the same place that people are going to stick their bags or need to sit down or essentially do what they did in the booth that we had, there was at least someone there all the time.
Yep.
Last call for any other future considerations relating to swag. All right, let's move on to roles. Eeyore has one comment. Eeyore, are you on the line? I see.
I'm on the line.
Yes.
I don't remember which comment I had.
You had the change the CNCF role to be CNCF rep and add a CNCF shadow role.
Yeah, we had a brief discussion with Jeff, but it's up to like the community discussion. So the point there was that Deb was technically the single person from CNCF on the table on the staff and within the staff and table, where the CNCF representative could be only the representative of the CNCF staff. So we spoke to Jeff, and I went out with the suggestion that we could rename this role to have another person to be as a shadow to act as a proxy in the case if the main CNCF event representative is not there, so someone else could route the request somewhere. So that's it.
All right. Sounds like things are in motion there. All right, so let's move on. Oh, actually, does anybody have any other comments relating to roles for future considerations? All right. Next up is content. I don't think Jeremy's on yet, so we're going to skip Jeremy's. Jay Burkus, you've got the next one with big one, fewer tracks rooms.
Yeah. A lot of the program sessions were sparsely attended. Large part because contributors were really into the hallway track. Like I had times when we had less than 20 people, less than 25 attendees in the big room, and like 100 people outside in the coffee area talking. So if that's what folks want, we can save ourselves a lot of trouble by simply having fewer concurrent tracks. And I think that's the way to go. And it'll be less planning and less work and a whole bunch of other things.
The best part about those recordings, though, is we have them for history now. Like especially like the practical Git. Even though some of the sessions were sparsely attended, they're going to have view rates of thousands at this point.
Yeah, it doesn't apply to the discussion sessions, though.
Yeah. No, I get that as well. But to me, and what I told a lot of the presenters myself is to think about this as an investment, especially like the intro to scalability would have been awesome for like a recording, stuff that we can put on their documentation that would help contributors. That's how I look at this, really. It's a way to get them out and about and educating the contributor base when they would not have probably done that during the year at any other time. All right. Any other comments about fewer tracks, big room, fewer tracks rooms? The other comment, though, is you're also going to need broader content as well, which seems to turn a lot of our contributors off because previous year.
I think we have a good assortment of content. It still works. And like I said, the evidence is people are really into the hallway track. If they're looking for more specific stuff, then that'll happen in the hallway. And like maybe we even look at more ways to formalize that. Like someplace for people to post that, hey, the observability team is going to have an impromptu meeting over here. And here's a blank sign that they can fill out and stick it on their table.
And then you have the next comment too about which rooms are recorded.
Yeah, that was just a communication problem in that I wasn't clear that Deb was telling me that we didn't have the budget to mic and record all rooms. So we ended up at first with a contract that said that some rooms would be recorded but not mic'd, which made no sense at all. We need to look at that, make sure it's in the budget ahead of time. It'll obviously be less of a problem if we're doing fewer concurrent tracks because that's less of an expense. We just need to be aware that miking a room and recording a room are two different things in the contract for most venues. And therefore we need to decide in each of those.
Can we make it a best practice to record all sessions go forward unless they're on conference or technical discussions? I feel like, we've got people flying in from Poland to do talks. Yeah. Like, I really think that every session should be recorded with the exception of on conferences and technical discussions.
I'd like to record the unconferences and technical discussions too.
I would too, honestly, but budget. Like, so again, right. Like that means you're going to
but if we end up doing fewer concurrent rooms, which is, see previous point.
Yeah.
Then it shouldn't be a budget issue anymore.
something else to possibly consider too. A lot of groups aren't utilizing the actual like SIG deep dive sessions during KubeCon itself. Maybe for some of this stuff we push out to turn the deep dive into something more akin to what they present at the Contributor Summit.
Well, I already did that for content for this Contributor Summit because we had a number of submissions for things that were basically very SIG-specific content. And we rejected those, or in a few cases where it was borderline, got them to modify it to make it more inclusive of people who were not regular participants in that SIG. So we did actually push people to look at, hey, this really sounds like a SIG, deep dive. You should submit that. The exception in there, the instrumentation session was a substitute for a session that got canceled. Wasn't on the original schedule.
All right. And then any more comments regarding room recordings or anything like that? And then any other comments relating to future considerations for content in general? It looks like Dawn has one for add 10 minutes on the schedule with location for the group photo. Dawn, did you want to go into any details about that?
No, I think we talked about it last time. It's just, I think having it explicitly on the schedule, make sure that everybody can show up.
All right. And then, all right, let's move on to facilitator future considerations. Jay Burkus, you have most of these as well, starting with collect cell phone numbers.
Yeah, so one problem we had this is just an incidental thing. One problem we had in the morning was we couldn't find some of the room facilitators, and we didn't actually have cell phone numbers for people so that we could find out, because they were actually at the venue. We just didn't know where they were. And that's just something honestly we should just do for all staff and volunteers, right? Is make sure we have cell phone numbers for those people and the cell phone they'll be using at the event so that we can message them if we don't know where they are. Let's see, have a written checklist printed schedule for room proctors. We did not have a printed list we could hand them on the day of the event.
We did. Noah had it in his deck.
Right, but it wasn't a piece of paper we could hand them and take to the room.
Printed 20 copies, Josh.
Okay, room proctors didn't have these copies, so I don't know where they went.
Yeah, that's disappointing because we did all that work and clearly it was not followed. So yeah, that's definitely a problem and definitely need to do that better for next time for sure.
Okay. Handbells, which apparently have already been taken care of. I presume that note is from Deb. Just as a, because we have a couple of breaks in the schedule, and I find that handbells are a good way to let people know that sessions are starting again without spending a lot of time going around shouting, which is what I ended up doing instead. And that's all for my items.
Noah, are you on? Noah does not look like he is on. I'll read his restructuring of room facilitator roles. First bullet, track ownership, less bouncing around. Second, need to start the process earlier. And 3, have room proctors take head counts. I'll also add another one with please try to have this group not be huge. More is not better. Any other comments about restructuring of room facilitator roles? I also kind of think that every shadow should take a room. I feel like you should, between this core group of people, we should have room facilitators covered. That's just my take on that too. I feel like if we have 40 people that like we don't really know and they're not necessarily in the community yet, et cetera, that like just adds to the chaos. And it would just be so much better if that core crew of people could be shrunken down a little bit.
Yeah, although for SanDiego, we had more positions to cover than we had people on the organizing staff.
I definitely saw shadows that were not listed as room facilitators or any kind of day of help.
I mean, I took 4 hours worth of rooms in SanDiego, but the other thing is oftentimes I am like bouncing between the room and some other task, because once someone is in the room and actually presenting, like checking in every 10 minutes is appropriate. You don't, like me personally, I have never found whenever I've proctored a room either at KubeCon or in other events that I have had to sit there the entire time. So being able to bounce between the room and then something else once the session had started and people have actually like, gotten into the rhythm of their presentation, it's fine.
And then any other comments about room facilitators? And then Josh, I just saw you copy another one for day of.
Yeah, for some reason, a bunch of my stuff for Monday activities got copied to Sunday, and I don't know why. Actually, almost nothing I have is for Sunday. So I don't know where that Sunday heading came from.
I am literally in the middle of editing this live. So
Okay.
Sorry. No, so go ahead.
Okay, so let me just move that Sunday heading and then we need to move the items. Okay. There we go. Oops, something disappeared. Yeah, so one of the things that we could do to get a better idea of no-show or showing up for only 1 or 2 hours rates would be having the CNCF make a comparison of registrations for the Contributor Summit against other events and letting us know how many people were double or triple registered. They wouldn't get 100% of those because people may register under different email accounts for different things. But it would at least give us a better idea of what to plan on.
And then what about your comments about the SIGs versus meet and greets?
Oh, just we had to combine a bunch of tables. And were we expecting to do that? Dawn is here. So I don't know whether we were expecting to need to combine tables or we just didn't really know how many tables there were going to be.
That's a good question. I don't think we ever counted the tables. I think we assumed that there would have to be some combining of tables. I actually think that next time, maybe, I don't know if the suggestion was in here already somewhere else, but I think we actually need to count the tables, have like a map, and have some organized way of distributing the SIGs. Because the problem with having it be super successful and everyone was there was that it turned into chaos because we just had random SIGs at random tables and it was really hard to find which SIGs were where to be able to help match people up to the right tables. So I think we could be more organized about that for next time.
Yeah, and the Sigbeard thing is just a note for me. So we're going to have Sigbeard again. We should have paper beards. Maybe we should do Sig Rainbow next time. Or Sig Fashion, if Steven's around.
Can we have a Sig Tall for tall people?
And have those plastic stilts for people who want to join Sig Tall and don't qualify yet?
Love it.
Let me say my last thing. This actually is a Sunday comment, which was it kind of felt like we had too many things going on at once in the party, so some things got neglected. Because there was so much to do at the party. I mean, we try to have things to do. I think maybe we could have cut one thing. I don't have any particular suggestions on which thing, but there was like a period like in the first or second hour of the party where we had karaoke and dogs and unconference scheduling and the raffle bingo thing all going at once.
Paris has lost her internet.
He's restarting.
So I have mixed feelings on that. From like a top-down perspective, there were a lot of things happening. But at the same time, the karaoke was a long-running thing where you could like pay attention or not. The dogs were a long-running thing, I think 2 hours, where you could pay attention or not. And the unconference was, I believe, the only like short thing where it was Marky and Paris. I think it was Marky and Paris carrying around the whiteboard, like sign up, sign up, sign up. But like having multiple small things that you could focus on means you could choose what you did.
Okay.
And oftentimes a lot of people were just kind of, doing the hallway track and talking with their group anyways.
I mean, the thing that I really saw get not utilized was the dogs.
I think this is where you and I are going to disagree, because I went in there for 20 minutes, and in those 20 minutes, I saw at least 10 people come in, pet the dogs, and leave. And I always saw a little bit of traffic. The thing was,
Okay.
the area itself wasn't that big, and I don't think people wanted to crowd the dogs, which is good. But I do think they got utilized. It just wasn't like a mad rush, something like that. I would also love to be proven wrong or have other opinions.
Yeah, I'm with Jeff. I got mixed feelings here. Yeah, there were a lot of things happening at once, but that also meant that you could be doing a ton of things. So you could do the bingo and meet with people, or you could listen in on the hilarious and wonderful karaoke, or you could go pet the dog and chill for a bit. It gave people a lot of options instead of just hanging by the bar.
Yeah, I think especially with sort of alcohol-focused events like this one, that giving people other options and other things they can do, I think helps.
Agreed.
I think I wanted to add on to the whole, yes, there was a lot of things going on. I don't think it was a problem on like the attendee side of like attendees like being like, there's too much stuff. I think it was the things going on which required like, high kind of maintenance-ish from, well, for me, like with the bingo stuff, I felt like I kind of underestimated a lot of things because it's the first time running it. So as a result, I felt like a huge chunk of my time and a huge chunk of also Deb's time, and like the Sunday was like spent coordinating the bingo, and I guess a huge chunk of Marky's time as well was spent coordinating the unconference. And so for those sort of like items there, maybe a bit more people staffing the organized to staff them, because I got a lot of help from other people like George jumping in and helping with the bingo. But yeah, that's my comment there.
So I like discussing and rehashing things over and over, but I also recognize that we were kind of double booking this meeting, so a new contributor could have their specific retro. So I saw we still have 3 more things: Dawn, Paris, and that was Dawn, Paris, Yang, and Deb. Deb looks like she addressed Yang's, and Paris looks like she addressed Dawn's. Do we want to talk about those for like 30 seconds each and then move on to NCW? Don, you're up next.
Sorry, I'm muted.
All good.
I mean, I know we just promoted the heck out of everything, but we still had people like for the meet and greet who were like, oh, well, I booked my flight for Monday night. And so I don't know if there's anything more explicit that we can do about just making sure that the date, and not just saying it's on Monday, but actually saying it's on Monday, the whatever, in every single communication that we do. I think we just need to be really clear that the date of the party and the date of the event in absolutely every communication we put out. I mean, maybe it already was. I don't know.
We can have a TLDR with key dates.
Yeah,
Because
key
there's also
dates
like
and
registration
times.
close.
Yeah,
Key
because
dates and key
people
times.
are like, of course I'll be at the contributor summit, and then they just don't really actually pay any attention to when it is.
Yeah, I
Key dates and
definitely
key
think
times.
we should run like KDev emails weekly about like a certain activity that we're having to highlight it. It's kind of like Contributor Summit highlight of the week and things like that. I think more communication is actually good here. So +1 to that. I think that's it for that section. And I'm back, y'all. Comcast internet. What a bummer.
Should we kick over to
Let's kick
the
over
new
to
contributor?
let's kick over to new contributor workshop. I'm scrolling up to those sections. Anybody want to talk about? We didn't even do a what went well for NCW, right? We kicked what went well and what could be improved to this call, right?
I think so, yeah.
All right, so let's start with what went well. Jeremy, I know you had a couple things on here for new contributor workshop. Do you want to kick us off with what you think went well?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember because it's been like a week. And
I know. Well, think of stuff that's just off the top of your head that went well.
I think the best thing that went the best for the NCW was having people in the room to do hands-on help, because we ran into a bunch of issues and people had, especially in the new contributor workshop, had a lot of varying levels of familiarity with any of the tools involved. Like some people didn't know how to use Git, some people didn't know how to use Go. So there's combinations of those things. And I think having people in the room, especially we had several, 3 or 4 maybe in the NCW, like the beginners track. I think that was super helpful and made it successful. Like at the end, even though we had a bunch of issues, there were still people that at the end were like able to make a change to kubectl and build it and see that it worked, and had some understanding of where the code lived. And I think that was really useful to people. And the ones that like I saw them have that success, we're really happy that like the people were there to help each other. Also, people started helping each other as they were sitting next to each other. I think we definitely should encourage that. Maybe like as a group thing, because I think we kind of broke up into like, here's what you should do, and then it was kind of like a free-for-all, and we wandered around to help people, which worked really well. But I think we could, this is probably like what we could do better. Maybe so, like have more guided.
Right. In previous NCWs, one of the things that we've actually done is redistribute people so that you have a variety of experience levels at each table.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you had a chance to do that at this particular one.
So for this one, we broke into a beginner track and an advanced track, or intermediate track. We didn't do that in the beginner one, and that might have helped to make sure that we had that kind of distribution spread around. There were a lot of people that had like very, very basic. I don't know, like if there were prereqs or not, but. So there was like, it was even for the beginner section, I think it was pretty wide in the amount of knowledge people had.
That's where I was going with those registration questions too, y'all. Like we had all this data about the folks and like their skills. And yes, I know that people overinflate their skills or maybe even underinflate their skills, but at least it's still a good pulse of like how maybe we could group people in the room and stuff like that. I just wanted to say that like for future considerations on registration, if there's specific groupings that you could figure out ahead of time, use it.
I can say like a good chunk of people, even in the introductory one, put like 5s as their Golang experience and a bunch of other stuff. I don't think we got good signal from from the stats from that.
Well, I mean, reword the questions to get what you need is what all I'm saying to you, is use the registration form to your benefit here. All right, any other comments about what went well with new contributor workshop? That bad, huh? I mean,
sorry, I'm just trying to get context here. No, so, okay. I think for the most part, people self-selected into the correct groups between beginner and intermediate. We still had some questions, but I think we were very clear on who should be in which room. Mainly the questions I had were from folks who were on the cusp of things. They're like, well, I've sort of done Kubernetes, but like, I don't know anything about the community. What should I do? So, and I think on that sense, we did well. The code base walkthrough was really helpful for people, and on the intermediate workshop, so that went well. The reason why I think that went well is because people asked good questions afterward. They didn't ask questions like, where are things? And they asked more questions on like, why are things this way? Which, you know, none of us have good answers for, so there's that. But that's just the way it is. There were a couple people on the intermediate side that would have probably done better on the beginner side of things. There was one person who asked really specific questions, very, they weren't really questions, they were more like demands, like, do you have a diagram of like the Kubernetes repository? And that was really funny because, and the best part was that one of the other participants said, this sounds like a great first issue.
I would have stood up. I would have been that person in the room that just stood up.
By that, I must infer that people are sort of getting the spirit of the open source contributor from the workshop as well.
That's awesome. I like that. That was a good tidbit. Thank you.
I remember one more that I thought went really well. We had some breaks when we were all in the big group where you talked to people at your table about like what your plans for contributing were, or what you were interested in. I thought that was really great. I think when we had those breaks at the table I was at, there was really great conversation between people, and it was a good icebreaker, so people were able to like ask more questions during the sessions. Like somebody had a question at the table about like some more specific things about how PRs worked and like what the workflow was, and I think they were really comfortable asking me that question because we had the interaction beforehand. So I think that was something that worked really well too.
Here's a good note. Anyone else have any what went well for NCW, and then we'll move on to what can be improved and future considerations. All right.
Oh, one more thing that went really well. It was really awesome to have everyone's GitHub handles beforehand, and we could, I don't know how that worked out in the beginner track because that's where we do the playground exercise, and we don't do that in the intermediate, but it was really successful to have it set up beforehand.
Yeah, that worked really well.
Also, I think the only people that were having CLA issues were very few. Like we really minimized that, and I'm not sure that we should spend more energy focusing on improving that.
Agreed.
So what we had worked as well as it was going to.
Cheers, everyone, for pounding down the CLA stuff ahead of time. Yes. Yeah, finally, Tim says as well. Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so our favorite section, what can be improved? Let's see, going down here, new contributor workshop. Jay Burkus, you actually have the first one with a bunch of NCW attendees didn't get the prep email for whatever reason.
Yeah, that was just a comment, which was, you know, I talked to some of the NCW, was helping some of the NCW attendees, and they didn't get the prep email. I don't know whether it was during Gmail's issues or something else.
I also wonder if on the reg itself, we should put in big bold letters that they're going to receive other information. Like, so, you know, something along those lines of like, your reg is done, but you're going to get a ton of other information, so look out for it or something like that. I don't know. We always have a problem in this area, y'all. This is another thing about doing the new contributor workshop out of a box. Oh, we've had so many mixed results with like the prep emails and like who reads them and like who actually, like some people will even come in and say, oh, we read it. I thought we could just do it here. Stuff like that. So,
yeah, actually, but we did some of that. We did, in fact, ping everybody in the beginning of the workshop and said, hey, we just realized that the network is completely trashed. So if you haven't cloned Kubernetes yet, start it now because it's going to take you half an hour.
Half an hour seems.
So we do have reminder slides for everybody. We don't want to go overboard with that because we also don't want to give the impression that this is like the expected workflow. I think we should focus on the CLA because that's the one that we cannot do in real time.
All right, Jeremy, you have the next few. You've got Harborbox, NCW instructions, and a couple other items under there.
Yeah. So we, in the beginner workshop, like we had instructions for pulling things from the Harborbox, and that was, we didn't actually end up using them because we didn't have time, I think. And that was useful for people. But then we had some people who were trying to use like cloud machines or their machines were super locked down, and like having worked in an enterprise before, that's super common. Like I'm going to bring my laptop that Lockheed issued me, but I can't actually install anything on it. So I would use like an AWS instance or something, or a droplet. That's what people were doing. So having some alternative instructions would have been useful. I think the Wi-Fi ended up kind of shitting out and not being great. So it was not super helpful like at some point because of the Wi-Fi, but I think when the Wi-Fi was still working, it was really useful for people to be able to pull those things really quickly and not saturate the network. The next one is the instructions, and this probably plays into Chris's point about the team being thrown together in the flu. There were some instructions that conflicted. Like we had people check out, we said install Go 113, but then we had them check out like a 116 branch. So there was some conflicts there because you can actually build 116 with Go 113. So we had to do some like real-time troubleshooting of things. And then I think because we broke and then like kind of let people fend for themselves, it would have been a little more helpful in the beginner section, I think, if we did a little bit more hands-on guided things where like we did things from the stage. Having done a couple of workshops, I felt that worked pretty well when we did them. So people could follow along and see what was happening. Like while we had the people in the room to go help, I think there were more people that needed help in our session, at least, that weren't, like we couldn't help them all. So there was some pauses where people stumbled over commands or didn't really understand what the instructions on the slide said. So having like maybe a little bit more hands-on approach there would have been good, especially with the instructions being kind of not validated. But also, like I think a follow-on to that is maybe like have a week before, have the content done so that we could validate things beforehand.
And there, I think part of it is the shifting of staff. I'd walked through it with Marky a week or so before and highlighted each of those things as a potential gotcha to decide a path, which Go and which K8s to choose to build and fix it down ahead of time, one or the other. And to note, because it's in flux, like for the contributors, and that we almost every time we have one of those gotchas, something is in a slightly odd state because we're doing development as we go. So that was definitely our current one, and it was one we should have been able to better foresee.
All right, I have 5 minutes left.
All
4
right.
minutes now.
And then we've got, looks like Chris Short's not on the call, right? Jeremy, you kind of covered his as well, right? All right. And then any other what could have been improved for NCW?
I added a bunch of playbooks to the events folder in the community repo, and I have some suggestions on what could be improved. I think we spent a lot of time talking at people, and I put some ideas. So a couple things that I want to improve. Number one, we have been moving towards modularizing the workshop and breaking it up into time-boxed, focused sections. So I added a bunch of playbooks where I tried to break out all the content by topic, put a time estimate on them, and put suggestions on implementation on them. One of the main things that was hard this time was that I had been presenting most of the content by myself in previous workshops, and the delegation didn't work out super well because I handed people slides that I had made and I had context for. So going forward, what I would want to do is hand people sections of the workshop, coordinate together, but have people be in charge of their own content. Having unified slide topics, I know is important to some people, but I think it is more important that you own your own content. So that's one of the things. And then I put like some really specific suggestions with the, so going back to having people be more engaged rather than talking at them, we can hide some like fun Easter eggs. So one of the interactive exercises that I think works really well for the beginner track is the playground exercise. I think most people are like really excited to try it out in a safe place and understand how the workflow goes. And I see Jeremy nodding. So, so I think that is really cool. So we want more of that. So I was thinking in the how we communicate, we actually spend some time prepping a specific channel on Kubernetes Slack where people introduce themselves, but like maybe have like some kind of Easter egg hidden, like the first person who finds the channel on Kubernetes Slack with the most words, or you know, something like that, gets a prize. That will encourage people to join and actually stay engaged. Or the first person to like introduce everyone at their table in the new Slack, right? Something like that, and do something similar for discuss. What was the other thing that I had? Anyway, there's a bunch of ideas in the playbooks that focus on making it more interactive. So that is my main, I talked for a bunch, sorry. Does anyone have comments about these? Like make it a little bit more interactive, spend less time talking at people, and have break out the content with, you know, time boxing and suggestions into playbooks. Have every presenter own their own content. Those are the big three.
Plus one. Any comments to Gwen's?
Plus
also,
one.
I don't want to lead this forever and on. So this is, I am really.
Yeah, I agree. Any other comments for what needs to be improved?
The network. Can we bring our own network?
Trying.
That is
Yeah,
because
bring my Unify from home.
People are like, why don't you just have like a fake setup? And I'm like, A, because it's a ton of work. B, because we don't know what everyone's computers look like. And C, because that's not really the point. The point is to work with Kubernetes. So it doesn't really work to have like a sandbox solution. I think we want our own network.
I agree. Last minute comments? Later taters for everybody dropping. I also have to drop. I've got a steering committee meeting. But y'all can still chill and talk if you want. Please feel free to wrap things up. Otherwise, it was an awesome event. no matter the Wi-Fi issues, y'all did great. You worked in ambiguous times. And let's rock the next one. So much. Work, love. Bye, y'all.
Bye, Paris. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.